Heartfelt conversations can change the world. Here's the Epic Kate podcast.
Hello. I'm so happy.
Hello.
I'm so happy to have the wonderful Penni Jo Ma on my channel. We call her Penni Jo Ma because she wanted to be like another kind of motherly, grandmotherly figure in my twins' lives back in the day.
Yeah. And
Aw.
then I haven't seen you in forever, and I'm so sorry. I'm not much of a Penny Jo Ma anymore, but
Hey, you'll always be Penni Jo Ma.
okay. Well, I really appreciate that. I love your girls. I love you, and I'm so happy to see you again and to work
Yeah.
with you. This is fun.
This is
So, yeah.
awesome. So this podcast has I've talked to a lot of interesting people. We've gone to a lot of interesting places and inner journeys and things like that. But it's not so often that I've had the chance to talk to people who actually know me and
Yeah.
we've actually lived together, and we had this whole culture of this full-time mission field together for over a decade. You met me on my 21st birthday.
Yeah. That's crazy. That's crazy.
I'm
Okay.
like
I'm 50
older.
now. I'm 50 now. So, how old would I have been when you were 21?
I'm like older than you were when you met me because I'm
So, I would have been
37.
in my 30s.
Yeah, I think you were like
Oh, okay.
33.
So, I would have been 34, peak coolness. So, yeah,
Baby Penny Joe,
I know. And
34.
yet, my daughter would have been 6. And yeah,
Aww.
back in the day.
And it's just we were the community that we were in was so insular. It was so, I mean, and I'm sure like any place you go to, they have their vernacular, their lingo, their customs, their social hierarchies and all that jazz, and you find your place in it or you don't. Like you assimilate or you feel uncomfortable and you don't last for very long.
Yeah.
And I think that it would be really cool to talk with you and see how many people we can find that it would resonate with that have been in full-time ministry and and then left and figured out who they were outside of it, and I don't know, maybe a bit of processing of what it was like, how it was our identity, and then it wasn't. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
What do
I
you
think I hear a lot of similar stories when I hear from people that were in, well, first of all, we're in a job culture because I think every job culture has its own way of doing things and where people fit, and I'll hear that a lot from people where they say, I had this company and I really believed in the company and then went, and even though it's a secular thing, there still is a culture and an atmosphere and things like that. I think we had the added benefit or detriment because it was also related to our spirituality and our theology and our ministry. um and I don't want to negate that, but I'm also hesitant to think, to get so persecuted minded that it's like the only place where it happens, because I know that it's not, do you know? But yeah, so
we
yes, let's talk.
we only see things through our perspectives, and
Yeah.
we there's nothing to be ashamed of about that. Like something that really strikes me about my time in it was how people were always saying, "Oh, I could never do that. You're so special." And you just got so like, "Yeah, I am pretty special, aren't I?"
Yeah, it's an up and a down, though, I always felt, and especially because my job was like recruiting, for a long time in the ministry. I sat there going, are people saying it's so special because that's their way of saying, I would never do that? It's like, it's a weird thing because it's a weird pedestal. I always find, it's like pedestals whenever you do that with moms. It's like, oh, you have such a sacrifice. It's like, well, you could just help me. It's like, you don't have to make it this completely alienated thing. I now I'm getting off on a tangent, but putting people on a pedestal is a weird thing, either for idealizing somebody or making them a monster. It's this way of separating them from you so much, and just, I think, refusing to see commonality
Mm.
sometimes. But yes, it does do a weird thing in our brains, where we go, wow, I guess I must be just incredibly brilliant. And then, I snag my nylons and I'm completely convinced that that's not the case. So, anyway,
Let's go back to when you joined. You were a baby, right?
when I joined, I was 18, and I really, again, because I was in the ministry from the age of 18 to 45. So I've had a lot of time to think about, okay, why did I join? What did I want? And so now I'm never sure if, I'm even saying the things that were true at the time. They were certainly true of things at various different times. But I would say one of the things that I found really appealing when I joined the ministry was getting away from Wisconsin, getting away from my family, getting away from the life that was sort of set out for me, because I was unsatisfied with that. And so this seemed like a really good, let's say a productive way of escape, if that makes any sense. It wasn't just nothing, but yeah,
It's
that's what I
funny,
would
I
say.
realize in asking that question, these are the questions we got so sick of answering.
Yeah.
How did you get into this? Where have
Yeah.
you been? Where are you going next?
I remember at one point, and it was in my first mission, when somebody asked me that, and I was really young, and I was with three people that were in their late 20s. So there was already that divide. And, I have a twisted sense of humor. So we were at the dinner table, and they said, well, how did you get into this? And I said, well, there was a van on the side of the road, and they said, do you want some candy, little girl? And I said, okay.
Oh,
my my team leader is like, don't say that. I'm like, oh, that makes it better.
but how did the hosts respond?
I think it was one of those frozen things and then a laugh. I'm not sure. It was one of those points where I wasn't completely sure how the joke was going to land before I said it. I do
It's
that quite a bit.
it's such an interesting thing how quickly you grow up and yet don't, but that's a whole other thing. When you're doing this, because I remember I joined when I was 19, barely, like
Yeah.
weeks after my birthday, and immediately I'm assimilated into the culture and mindset of middle-aged people, because those are the people that have homes open to us. Their kids have gone off to college or got married or blah blah blah. And so I'm around these people and they're pleasantly laughing, maybe fake, maybe real, maybe not, I don't know. I'll take it. And people just are polite and friendly faces, and I just didn't like, how do I even be around people my own age
That
anymore?
is true. And I didn't even really sort of think about that. I mean, to me, it was my college experience without being a college
Mm-hmm.
experience. So, yeah, I didn't tour with people my own age. I saw people my own age in the summertime, if that. Um, and I wasn't really comfortable with people around my own age, but that's, I think more of a me thing as well.
How did experiences in Covenant Players affect your spiritual life? Your spiritual processing?
I would say, for the most part, and again, it's hard to separate, because when I was touring, we were staying with when I was touring in the States, prosperity gospel was just sort of coming up.
Ooh.
Or it feels like it was just sort of coming up. It wasn't something that I was familiar with. And then it was really my first time of being with mega churches. It was my first time with being with that kind of thing. Well, ask and you shall receive, and seek and you shall find, and all of that stuff, and name it and claim it and all of that stuff. And it wasn't often that people would directly say to me, things like that. Well, you just have to believe, but it happened often enough that it does sort of get into you. And I remember thinking, well, Jesus couldn't have had very much faith then because, he certainly didn't do very well. Neither did Paul. They didn't live these lives of abundance and, material wealth. And, they didn't have those blessings. So, I mean, I also knew that there was a shift, that there was a split in what they were saying and what I was perceiving, but it really, gave me a tremendous sense of guilt. And then I got into this sort of covering thing where I would sort of pretend that things were better than they were. And I realized I couldn't be honest with people because, you stay with people and they don't care. They're giving a 5-minute evaluation of your life, and they're not ever going to think about it again. So what's the point in being honest about my struggles or my spirituality or anything like that? I stopped doing that.
Yeah. Plus, you're the
And
special
then,
guest. You're supposed to come in there and be the powerhouse full of
and
faith to come in and shake things up.
yeah, and so that was a thing. Um, and it also made people feel bad
And I go
that
back to, I'm curious about what you said about feeling guilty. So did you feel guilty for like a lack of prosperity?
I think so. And again, because the ministry was connected to, everybody says, oh, well, you have to have faith, but you can't just let it go at that. You also have to work. So it's like, yeah, you sit there going, I know that I have to work. I know that I have to make the calls. I know that I have to bring in the programs. I know that I have to bring in the money. Therefore, if I'm not bringing in the money, I clearly don't have enough faith. And that's one of those things. And I think that one is very, very hard for people to separate out. It got to the point where I wouldn't read. No, much, much later on in life, I just stopped reading the Bible, and that helped me tremendously. I've gone back to reading the Bible now, but I also have to be very, very clear about not making something an if then statement. The promises of God are true regardless of whether it's like, if you have enough faith, then you will see blah 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 blah. I don't do that anymore. I just go, I recognize in these people, sometimes they have massive amounts of faith, sometimes they don't have any faith at all. It doesn't seem to have a difference in how I would perceive their life from the outside.
Mm.
you
But
know
that really took a toll on your mental health, didn't it? Having to
that
always shove it down and always be the special guest.
Yeah, that took a toll on my mental health. Yeah, it definitely did. Yeah.
Do you remember a point where you were just like, I can't keep going this way?
Yeah, but it was years of that because again, things were also changing very much for me. And it was sort of hard to separate because again, I think the nature of the ministry that we were in, is you had no permanence. You had no way of really establishing something. So we would work and work and work and get an area to a place where we thought, oh, this is something we can live in. This is something we can now prosper from. And you'd be moved. And you'd be starting over again. I also had my daughter when I was 28. So it's like the first 10 years of my life in the ministry. Do you want me to say the name of the ministry? We keep
Oh,
not saying.
I already said Covenant Players, so
Oh,
it's fine.
great. Okay, that's great. My first 10 years, I was a single, where my first 5 years, I was a single, unmarried person. My second 5 years, I was a married person with no children. And then I became a mommy, and a mommy to young children, a baby, and then young children is completely overwhelming. And we were on the road for the first 3.5 years of her life. I would call that my first large, huge thing where I said, I can't do this. I cannot do this. And then we moved into the office, and I thought that would sort of help. And then it brought its own set of problems. But I really remember feeling from that point where I had my daughter, just this, of always feeling that I was never good enough, that I
Mm.
was not able to get things done, that I was not able to get the work, that everybody was, and people would even say it. I mean, we had people not use covenant players because basically, how could you be so awful as to take your child on the road? Do you know? And you said, and it's like most people, not a problem, but you get one or two comments, you know. But
Mm.
I think just always feeling like I was operating out of my biggest weaknesses, and I didn't have enough areas of strength to make
Mm.
up for that, so
I feel that, man. I
yeah.
feel like we were sent out so unqualified. Like, you're these kids just put in a van and go be professional and go bring in this much money
Yeah, and just a
and
huge lack of resources.
and go
Huge
and
lack of structure.
keep your faith up as you go. And
Yeah.
I also wanted to kind of go back to the whole, it's so interesting that prosperity gospel was kind of getting rolling in that time. And like, did you genuinely think Jesus didn't have enough faith, or was that just you holding the disconnect in your head of, well, they're wrong because obviously it's not that kind of abundance because that's not the life that Jesus had.
That was me holding the disconnect in my head. That was me sort of being in those churches and sort of having my wall up against that. And I remember too that I would get, and in one sense that was a bit of protection, because and you go and you perform at a church, and then the churches that are the wealthiest are the ones that are most likely not to pay you. Do you know? And say you just need to have more faith. And then pastor says that to me, and I watch him get into his BMW, and I go get into my junky van, and I go, yes, it's me that doesn't have the faith, because you deliberately kept my money. Do you know? And so, just, I mean, that was also a real protection, but it was also, um yeah, it wasn't very nice. But I also had to kind of call a spade a spade. Do you know that there were times when people would just roll you because they could,
Mhm.
because they had the power and you didn't, and they would stand in front of their church and, say, this offering is going to go to the covenant players. They really need it. They really need it. They really need it. And you watch that offering roll in, and that it's $800 or $900 that you could really use. And then they give you 200 and say, thank you very much for coming. And you say, and that's what happened. When you really saw it that evident like that, you couldn't say, oh, that's what God has for me. You just had to say, no, that's what that man had for me. And then
Did you experience any miracles or unexplainable things?
oh yeah, yeah, I mean, I certainly did. But again, oh, I don't want to negate it. Of course we did. Of course we did. Of course we did. But we were also in a place where we were so desperate for miracles. Do you know? So desperate for miracles. I mean, I remember, and of course miracles had monetary value. It's like you don't have anything, and then somebody gives you $2 and you can buy a cup of coffee, and you're like, praise God. And then you're like, but why don't I get to have the job where I can afford a cup of coffee all the time? Why isn't that a part of my ministry? um do you know? And I think that was really the problem, where people would talk about faith, and I would say, why am I supposed to be the one that needs to have this faith for $2 when you get to have the stories that is faith for a new $200,000 house? Do you know? Why is that? Why are we in such different realms of faith stories?
And there
Do you
was a
know?
lot of indoctrination, to keep people in like in the form of these plays. Like we were actors. I didn't say that in the beginning, but I will write all this in the description, and if hopefully people will actually read that. They're called show notes in a podcast. Um, like we were traveling around doing theater, and wait, what was I saying? I lost my point.
Indoctrination in the plays.
Indoctrination. Yes, the pathway plays.
Yeah.
Like, there's this series of plays about a person on the path, and it's hard, and she's got a heavy backpack, and she comes across people who are just sitting there and they're just having it easy, and they're obviously wrong. and they are the people that really have faith are people who are struggling.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, those were, yeah, not good. I mean,
They felt so because they were for Covenant players
they were for
more.
Covenant players, but again, there's a reason why we couldn't perform them anyplace else. It
Yeah.
doesn't make sense to anybody else. I mean, it's
Yeah.
obviously, it's obviously just for Covenant players.
And also
And
just the
yeah,
we're better than those people that are not struggling for their to put scrounge together $2 for their coffee.
yeah, yeah.
There's a real like poverty pride,
I think it's a suffering pride. Do you know?
suffering.
I mean,
Called,
it
do
was
you have the spiritual gift of suffering and
it,
black or
it
whatever?
was
Like,
years later. Did you ever get into Doctor Who? I
oh
got really
yeah.
into Doctor Who,
We watched
and
Doctor
there's
Who
this
together, dude.
we did watch Doctor, I can't remember. There's this one line in The Doctor's Daughter, which is not a great episode, where it talks about being a Time Lord is more than just the biology. It's a shared history, a shared suffering. And I went, oh my God, that's Covenant Players. A shared history, a shared suffering. And you go, yeah, without those things, what is it? Do you know? Because I mean, especially when I look at the times that we would get together and celebrate things, and you talked about that as well when you were in and I was in. Why are we talking about people that haven't been here for 20 years? Why is that what we're still talking about? We're not talking about what's happening now. We're talking about that. We're talking about those times. It was always just this uh repackaging of the great things, and not, yeah.
And,
And I
and
think that was as well where it came to, okay, I need to get out because I'm not these people. Do you know? And
mm,
it doesn't really matter whether I'm here or not.
and
you
you
know
were in the group in a time when there was more economic prosperity. People were affording to book us, and I came in 2005, came to Europe in 2007. Um, things weren't great in the US in the 2008
yeah,
from 2008 on. Things were
yeah,
pretty rough for a lot of people.
yeah.
And we were constantly held up to the example of, well, we got all these bookings. Why can't
Mhm.
you do it?
Yeah, if it makes you feel any better, and it probably doesn't, so were we. Do you know? And I think the one thing that I had the benefit of was that there were more middle people. There were more unit members than at the time that you joined, which was, I guess, really stripping out that middle. I mean, I think we had a larger class that joined, and it was like 32 people, and at the end of the first mission, half were gone. Do you know? So there was a stripping out right away. And then after that, I don't think they ever had a large joining class like that because people couldn't afford to anymore.
Mm,
Just because they couldn't take a year, 2 years. It was 2 years, right? Two
yeah.
years to do nothing, to do nothing economically. Do you
Yeah.
know? So 2 years of family support, 2 years of not having that, and I remember thinking when I was very young, and people would say, well, what about your retirement? And I'm like, oh my God, only old people think about their retirement. Well, you know what? Now I'm 50 and I had 27 years of not earning anything. And that is a reality, do you know? And so, yeah, it's like I'm okay because my parents, my mom especially, had a very, very good job and she put money aside for us. And when she sold her business, we got an inheritance
Oh.
based on that. I mean, that's why I have a house. Do you know? It's my mom's work. It's not my work. Do you know? And all I can do is say thank you. But yeah, I think especially about the faith and the economics of it. I was saying to my husband the other day, did I have faith or did I just know that my mom was going to take care of me? It's like, God,
And
I
then
don't even
there's,
know where I started at the beginning of this
ah,
of
me
this
neither. It doesn't
whole,
matter. I
yeah.
just, there's a really difficult point in this kind of sphere where it's you just have to dig your heels into more faith because there's nothing else left for you, you feel. Like,
Yeah,
this
I
is
think
all
you
I
do.
know how to do. I will probably be miserable out there in the boring normal life of just laundry and cleaning the house and like, I would die of boredom. Like, I'm not dying of boredom. I'm overwhelmed here too.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think probably we were a bit of adrenaline junkies,
Oh yeah.
and having that, and I do recognize it now that there are places where I just want to get in my car and go. And I don't want to know, what it looks like before I get there. I don't want to know for sure that I've got the right clothes. It's like, yeah, I'm living the life. I'm having the adventure. Um, but I think the other side, what you said of did you say I'm not good enough to do anything else?
I don't remember what I said, but I mean, it could have
Okay.
been along those lines of I don't know how to do anything else.
Yeah, okay. I remember because again, I joined, before I went to college, so I didn't have any kind of educational background.
Yeah, me
And I
neither.
remember, when it got to my, trying to think about what I could do in my 40s, and going, I don't have any degree, I don't have any, I don't have anything I can fall back on, and so that kept me in for a little while longer, I would say. But there were a lot of things that kept me in longer. I would say my main problem was everything that I was and that I had was bound up in the ministry.
Mm.
My economics, my ambition, my family, my friends, everything was in that. And so with it shrinking, and with it dying, it was just a very, very suffocating feeling because I couldn't fix it. You know?
Because it's a whole identity.
Yeah,
And it's like these people understand all my struggles. They were there, they walked by my side, they held my hand, they prayed
yeah,
for me, and they know how capacitous I am. And if I'm not with them, how is anybody else on the street going to know that I'm special and capacitous?
yeah, yeah. That is true. I do remember. I mean, did you ever take the transitions class?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I remember that being a really helpful tool for me of just knowing that chaos was kind of normal. And that actually, when I started to think about leaving, just knowing that chaos was normal was very helpful to me. It was one of those things where it was an actual tool that we had in Covenant players that helped me help me in the real world. So
But you experienced so many years and so many transitions within the mentality of the organization. Like you were around when people were like making lifetime commitments and being
yeah,
told by leadership like, no, you are meant to be here forever. And
yeah,
and when I came in, they had kind of dropped more into realisticness, and
yeah.
we're not pushing that, and we're not saying you can't talk to people who've left and stuff like that.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, I forget how big that was when I first joined. I mean, I knew again that there was a disconnect, because we would see people have a lifetime commitment and then, 6 months later, a year later, they're not there, you know. So
What kind of
yeah.
commitments did you make?
I made a 10-year commitment. And do you know what? I actually felt really, really strongly about it. And it's one of those things because I don't like to it it was kind of weird. I'm still willing to hold that as a truth. Do you know? And not just disregard it. I felt like it was a moment where it had a specialness about it. Now, again, I also look back through that, with my brain chemistry, but at the same time, my brain chemistry was what I made decisions with. Do you know? So I do recognize too when other people say that doesn't really happen. It may not happen to people that have a different kind of brain chemistry. Um, I really felt like I had an audible voice. I made a 10-year commitment and I made the 10-year commitment. At the end of my 10-year commitment, was when I had my baby. Do you know? And I could very easily look at just my timeline and say that everything after me having my baby was just me extending it. Do you know? And I didn't have that, but I did because I had my baby, I had my husband. My husband did not have a lifetime commitment, but really felt very strongly about being in Covenant Players. So my ministry became about supporting him, became about supporting, the people on my unit. I would say again, you talk about getting into a place of weakness. I'm not a very supportive person. I can do it, but it's not like my first thing. My first thing is to say, "Hey, everybody, look at me." Do you know? And my whole time in Covenant Players became about picking up the pieces for other people, because I was a mom, because I was a wife, because I was the female on the unit, because I was, all of those different things. And I think those are more ways of, being socialized as a person. It's not that anybody said to me, "That's your job now." It's just that it's sort of like an unspoken expectation, you know.
Hmm.
So
The thing that it was really interesting how much it affected my heart when you told me that the office in Germany, Stahlhafen am Wiesensee, um, was finally being sold after all
yeah,
these years.
yeah,
And how many offices Morton and I have helped close up, like in South
yeah,
Africa, in America, in Oxnard, and we did quite a lot of work there too.
yeah. You did.
And just that feeling of, oh my gosh, I should be there helping. That's such a burden. I can't stand the thought of just a few people having to deal with all of that stuff.
Yeah,
And just the feeling too of I'm I don't have time to think about Covenant Players every day. I was like,
yeah,
yeah, it was 13 years of my life, but my kids were 2-ish when we left, and now they're 7, and I have
yeah.
another baby, and I have my own business and all this YouTube stuff going on. So it's
Whole
not
different
like it
life.
really affects me that
Yeah,
much. But thinking about a big door closing, this physical place that what felt like home and that was home for 4 months, whatever, not existing anymore. There's a grief in that.
yeah. I mean, I've had time to process it because, again, when we left, um, we first moved, what, 10 minutes away from the office, and now we live 20 minutes away from the office. So I can still go over there. I mean, I have helped a little bit with packing boxes and moving things and getting rid of things, and that's been fun. For me now, it's like watching the death of that, that's been sick for so long. It's like a mercy death now.
Yeah.
Do you
I
know?
was
It's just
shocked
like,
that it wasn't done sooner, considering
yeah,
how the heck could they pay the bills, just a few people not able to perform much?
yeah, yeah. And that's one of those things where I just, ugh, I I have to really physically back off of it. I mean, emotionally back off of it, because again, it's like you said, the responsibility. Do you know? I think one of the blessings that we had. I mean, of course, at the time it was really, really awful, but my relationship with our boss had gotten so bad because I'm sitting there going, "We need more people. We need more people. We need to change our way of booking things. We can't afford to drive to churches anymore. We can't physically put gas in the tank, but we can do YouTube channels. We can do a website. We can do all of these virtual things that people are already doing." And just having that automatic no, 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 and then personal, attacks. And I mean, um, because you've gotten those emails and they're horrible. But at the same time, when I got to the point where I had to say, you know what? If that's what my leader really thinks about my work, it doesn't matter whether I'm here or not here. I can't make anything better. And even, according to what she says, I'm actually making things worse. So it's better for me to go. And once I released myself of that, that was just, that was fantastic. And so to now, I mean, and of course it's hard. And I always say this, I don't have any satisfaction in saying, see, I told you so. And yet at the same time, I knew that if I didn't leave, and I left 5 years ago, if I had been in Covenant Players now, I would be 50, selling the house, moving everything, and looking at starting my job and starting my working career at 50 with no education, with no money, because everything that we've managed to save in 5 years, we wouldn't have saved, we would have spent. I wouldn't have been able to buy my house. That money would be gone. It all
Mm.
would have gone into the gas tanks. It all would have gone into the food. It all would have gone into supporting a ministry, you know?
And now you're a you've been on TV for your amazing singing.
So on
You pretty
TV,
much
so famous.
you pretty much won The Voice, and you won the other show too. Which was the other show you were on
I
again?
won all of the
You won it
shows.
all.
I won all of the shows. It's like I mean, people Google me and they say she wins everything.
Wow.
Wow.
I knew her when.
Yeah, exactly. No, I was on The Voice for through the blind auditions, and then they throw me out in the battles. But it's okay. And then I did All Together Now, and then I did Spar Dinner, and yes, we did win that with our great food.
Nice.
Yeah,
That was a family vloggy kind of style, wasn't it?
yeah. It's a cooking show, and I can't cook at
And you're going
all.
to be
You
on
know,
more TV shows, aren't ya?
I've got something coming up in February, and I don't know what it is yet. And I
You're not
got to
at
tell you,
liberty
I'm a
to
little.
say?
No, I can't say. I think there's been press releases for it, but I can't say it because it's all kind of supposed to be a surprise.
Gotcha.
So
How
yeah,
exciting is that? Like, you are on the radar of people, of TV shows, because you're just so dang fun and likable that they're like, we want to have her on.
that's so sweet. I hope that that's true,
I mean,
but I don't know.
obviously,
I think there's times when, again, for me, I have to say, if they could get somebody better, they would get them. But as long as I'm the best person, they're gonna book me.
I mean,
So
that's how I felt about being a leader in Covenant Players.
that's fair.
I'm the
Yeah,
there's people a lot better than me available, but it's me and Morton that are here, so they're stuck with us.
yeah. I didn't even ask you about you. Do you want to talk about your experiences in Covenant Players? I
Oh,
mean,
it's crazy how little I remember.
yeah,
It's like, what, huh? I kind of need people that remember things to be with me and like prod my memory along of remember that family? Like I need to have Naomi on because she remembers everything.
yeah. I mean, again, she might not anymore.
Yeah. Or
Just
have some kind of current life regression where they take you this.
I don't know. I think it's one of those things. It gets boxed up. Do you know? And I mean, if there's anything that I worry about, it's the fact that I might have gotten too negative
Mhm.
about my overall experience just based on the last couple of years. Do you know? And forget about the good things. And I think when I try to be the most positive about it, I just have to say, I am just going to cut off the parts of me that are upset or mad or bitter about that and just say this was a time in my life for good or for bad. Do you know? It did make me who I am for good or for bad. Do you
Yeah.
know? And just kind of hope.
But you were always such a bright spot, such a bright shining star in my life, like ready to help with a smile and a joke. You never knew what was going to come out of your mouth that was going to make
That's
the
true.
current supervisors cringe, and
Oh
it was
God, yeah.
delicious.
Well, again, I think that's just that benefit of being, what, 13 years older than you? Is that what you said? So that's like the peak coolness time. Do you know?
I never thought Penny Joe's old. I mean, that's Larry. That's Larry's old.
Yeah,
Like Pam and Bart were old, but
yeah,
I just it's so bizarre to me that you were just in your early 30s when we met.
yeah.
Time is weird. Covenant Players ages people in such a weird way. And
No, but I notice it now too. When I look at people that I respected the most. They were probably that 10 to 15 years older than me because it's peak coolness. Do you know? It's that they've got enough of their shit together, do you know, that they can pull it off a little bit better. I think I'm not trying, what I'm trying to say is thank you for thinking I'm cool. But
It's so
I think
weird.
it was just that, yeah.
I'm now I remember the summer I joined, people were celebrating 20 years in. Sharon
Yeah.
Johnson, I think Lena Shane, or there was a few people that were celebrating 20 years.
Yeah.
And if I had stayed in and it still even exists in any capacity by next year, I would be
You'd be
getting
at
20
20.
years.
Yeah. Yeah. It does kind of flip everything. Yeah.
What do you think would be something like of value to say to people watching this who either were in Covenant players or were in their own little insular thing and have had to deal with adjusting their spirituality and perception of themselves and all of that jazz on the other side?
I say if they're still upset about things, if they're still bitter, if they're still worrying, if they're still worrying that they got stunted or irreparably damaged, they need to get professional counseling.
Mm,
I did get professional counseling while I was still in. I got that was really really nice actually. My supervisor at the time said you need to go, and I went and I got professional counseling. It was about 20 minutes away from me, and it was a Christian counselor. It was so helpful. I was on medication for a while. I'm going to recommend medication to people. I know a lot of people don't want to take um, uh, brain medication, but for me it was tremendously helpful, and it really cut all of the ties of this means this means this means this means this. I mean, I no longer look at a problem in my life and automatically link it to my lack of faith.
mm,
Do you know? And I think part of that is my change in circumstances. I have creative control over my own job. I have the power to set my own schedule and set my own priorities. Those things, yeah, make a huge, huge difference because you're not just stuck in this. We have to do this. You can really expand your ambition, expand your creativity, expand your own personal power, take up more space in the world. But if you're not in a place where you can move from one thing right into the other thing, do get help, do get counseling, do get medication if it's recommended. And I hope that people have the resources to have that, because yeah, it
I can
it
speak to
means
that,
so
that
much. Yeah.
there are therapists, life coaches, because there's some people go to therapy and they're like, I could be saying this to a tree or to a friend. You're not giving me anything. Um, and so there's life coaches that can actually help you towards a specific goal. And actually give you advice if that's something that you're more looking for than just someone to ask you questions. There's so many people that do pro bono work.
Yeah.
They know that it's not available to everyone, but they're willing to give so many hours a month.
Yeah.
So help is
And it's
available, but it's so true. There's no judgment in still feeling stuck by the trauma of something, by the spiritual abuse kind of
yeah.
thoughts, the the guilt, the shame, whatever. It's not anybody's fault to feel stuck in that,
Yeah.
but you can get out. And you don't
Yeah.
have to let this 2-year experience 30 years ago still make you feel broken now.
Yeah. And I think particularly if you notice something where you're unhappy, you're angry, you're upset about things, you deserve to be free from that. So
Mm,
that's yeah.
yeah. Well, I think that we've had talked about a lot of cool stuff. I know we could talk for 7 more hours just straight, but I don't know who would actually listen to that. But I hope that this video will reach people. And, you know, if you want to hear us talk about more stuff, if you have any specific questions or thoughts, you can, if we get enough people asking us specific stuff, we can have another conversation based on that. I know I'd be up for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Always happy to answer questions. And
Yeah.
Katie, I'm so happy to talk to you. I just think you're
Yeah.
so wise, and I think you're very patient, and you're just I really appreciate your vulnerability and your power, because I think you just really walk in that really well. And anyway, I've always admired you as a friend, and I'm so happy to respect you as a professional. I think you're great.
You're awesome too. And it's Penny Joe's music that's playing in the beginning and end of these videos. You should check it out.
It's like 5 seconds at
Hey,
both
hey,
ends, isn't it?
it's cool.
Hey, yes, but it is. Those
It's
are
like
amazing 5 seconds.
it's 20 seconds at the end because that's how long an end screen is.
That's amazing. Thank you so
You're
much.
welcome.
All
Um,
right.
so you should check out Penny Joe's music. She's so talented, and she has CDs. She's a professional. She's can be on all the TV shows and win them. And so,
So gonna win them all.
and if you speak German, you'll get even more out of it because she's doing all the stuff in German.
Thank you, Katie. You're very, very kind. I really appreciate it. Check out Epic Kate Podcast. It's excellent. Thank you, Katie.
All right. So the way that I end my conversations is I give hugs.
Hugs.
Hugs. And thank you for listening. Thank you for hanging out here. Please leave a comment. Please share this video with somebody that you think would get something out of it. And we'll talk later. Bye.
Bye bye.
I'm so glad you're still here. Please like this video, share it with a friend, and be sure to subscribe. Bye.